almost now. People send me presents and they don't tell me who they're from. It's weird. Hey everyone, and welcome to Chef AJ Live. I'm your host, Chef AJ, and this is where I introduce you to amazing people like you who are doing great things in the world that I think you should know about. So today's guest I met several years ago at the Plantrician Conference when it was in Orange County, and she's always been on my radar, but I really didn't have a platform for anybody back then. And now that I have a daily show, I knew I had to connect with her. She actually co-wrote a book with a previous guest, Jim Hicks. She's writing another book by herself right now. She's not only board certified in family medicine, but also in lifestyle medicine. And what's interesting is when they started certifying doctors in lifestyle medicine, she was in the very first group. So she's somewhat of a pioneer. She's from New York, but not New York City. And her name is Dr. Kerry Graff. Please welcome her to the show. It's so nice for you to take your weekend time to talk to my audience.
Oh, absolutely. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me.
I'm so, who are you? What's your story? How did you become plant-based? How did you get interested in lifestyle medicine?
So I practiced kind of a normal family practice for 17 years, doing everything kind of the way I was taught, the way I thought it was supposed to go. And during that time, I just got all kinds of health problems personally. I developed hypothyroidism. I had endometriosis and infertility and a gallbladder problem and my appendix out. And I was pre-diabetic. I was overweight, and I was really depressed. One night, first of all, I did hear about plant-based eating way back in 1997 from Ted Barnett. Dr. Ted Barnett was the radiologist who was head of the hospital here. And he regaled me with the wonders of, vegan diets. And I basically dismissed them because I'm like, if there's any truth to how healthy vegan diets are, I would have heard about it in med school or residency, and I hadn't. So I just chalked him up to being a vegetarian kind of animal rights person. And then he was kind of just saying it was healthy because he was trying to promote a different cause, and I just missed him. So anyway, then I got really sick, and one night I checked my sugar after eating dinner, and it was 197, and it got my attention. And luckily, my kids, who were much younger at the time, had just convinced me to get Netflix because I would be a lame mother if I did not get Netflix for them. And Forks Over Knives was on Netflix, and I watched it. And I was like, well, either there's something to this or these guys are just as crazy as that Ted Barnett guy. So I kind of went on a crazy research for the next 3 months trying to figure out if these people were for real. And I put myself on a plant-based diet to see what would happen. And it was so incredibly fast. Pretty much, I didn't have any abnormal sugars almost immediately. My energy and my mood just got so much better. That it was just and I lost 25 pounds without trying, which was great. And I was convinced. And then I kind of joked that I kind of started talking about it with patients and never shut up.
Your story isn't, I bet since then you probably read the China study and all those other things that doctors do when they get convinced. Your story is not that dissimilar to other doctors that I've talked to. And it's just the part to say, well, if it was true, they would have taught it in medical school. That is just, it drives me crazy because they're not teaching it in medical school on purpose in a way.
Well, I don't know whether it's on purpose. It's just really hard to change everybody's minds to being open to it. It was really an awful moment when I realized that I was, when you recognize that this is the truth, that what you eat matters profoundly. First of all, you get really annoyed because you spend a lot of money on your degree. And so they leave out the most important thing you needed to know, despite the fact that you paid, lots of money to go. And then you realize that whatever time you spent practicing medicine prior to that, you were doing it wrong. And it's really hard to admit that and then to shift. It feels really bad. So I have a lot of compassion for my colleagues who aren't quite there yet. I was not there for 17 years after I heard about it from Dr. Barnett. So I have to have a lot of compassion for other people if it takes them 17 years, right? So hopefully it won't.
17 years. I would imagine you're probably friends with him now.
Oh, we've been friends all along. Yeah, so there's no problem with that. I always liked the guy. I just kind of didn't take him seriously when he was talking about the wonders of this diet. So.
Well, we'll have to get him on the show and then he can tell his side of the story. Maybe he wasn't annoying enough.
Oh, it wasn't that he wasn't annoying. I think it's just really hard to accept that they wouldn't have taught you this in med school if it were really that that
Well,
amazing.
well, the thing is what you're saying about med school is what people say about doctors. So people say, oh, well, if this was true, my doctor would have told me if I could eat, potatoes and rice and beans and still reverse my diabetes, my doctor would have told me. If my diet mattered while I was having chemotherapy, my doctor would have told me. So the problem is that patients believe this too.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's a huge problem. So I actually now work for Rochester Regional Health, and my role there is as lead lifestyle medicine physician. And one of my roles is to educate all of the new physicians that get hired about lifestyle medicine. So at least they all hear it kind of at the very beginning of their careers, at least with us. And then retro train the other primary care folks in the health system so they learn more about it. And then we're just really trying to kind of broaden and kind of integrate it through primary care throughout the health system. So lots of work to do there.
So is that where Tom Campbell works, where you work?
He actually works for University of Rochester. So they're kind of the two competing health systems, but we don't really compete. We're all friends. All the like-minded plant-based folks in Rochester, we all support each other.
I read that you had an earlier opportunity to learn about this in college, but it was a good opportunity.
Well, I would, yeah. So it wasn't exactly. So the story is that I was looking for a job when I was a sophomore at Cornell, and I interviewed at 2 jobs for the summer working in labs. And the job that I took was working in a neuroscience lab doing ophthalmology research on babies. The other job would have been working in Colin Campbell's lab, working on the China study. So that would have been in 88, I think, 87 or 88. So right when he was doing all the China study stuff was when I interviewed for that job. And I took the job working in neuroscience instead because I thought I was going to go into ophthalmology. So I could have learned about this. I could have saved myself a whole lot of medical misery, and my patients would have gotten a lot better care earlier, but I just took the wrong path.
Wow. Well, it's obviously it kept knocking on your door because, so eventually you answered. So that's fantastic.
Well, that's what the universe does, right? It comes right back around and if you missed it the first time, you'll skip the lesson and the next.
I completely agree with that. So tell us about the book you wrote. You can hold it up. I do have a copy, but as I mentioned, I don't know where it is right now because of the way that my books are in color order instead of any other normal way that a person would put books.
I appreciate that you didn't do that by yourself to put them in color order.
No, when I first moved here, my husband didn't join me for 3 months and I was a little overwhelmed. So a friend who is a designer helped me, and it's very beautiful, my bookshelf, because all the red books are together, the blue and the green. But unless I remember what color the spine is, I can't find anybody's book. Not functional.
So I wrote a book back in 2015. It's the 4-Leaf Guide to Vibrant Health. This was along with Jim Hicks. And basically what happened was that, I told you I started talking about plant-based eating with my patients at that point. And what would happen is I kind of send them home and I'd be like, look, I want you to watch Forks Over Knives. It's on Netflix, just check it out, right? And they would come back in, and what would happen is that they'd say, well, yeah, okay, that sort of makes sense, but I'm already eating a healthy diet. But if you'd actually go through what they're eating, they were eating like 20% whole plants, which is better than the average person, but it's still like not what we're talking about here, right? So I needed something to quickly help people kind of see where their calories are actually coming from. And I was looking for resources like some sort of a survey that you could quickly do with people that would kind of look at what percentage of your calories are coming from whole plants. And the only thing I could find was Jim Hicks' 4-Leaf survey. So I contacted him and I asked him for permission if I could use his survey materials with my patients. And, he graciously said, yes, of course, but you need to tell me what happens when you use it. So it turns out that he had put out this survey, but really nobody was using it. So my office kind of became the beta test site for the 4-Leaf survey. And it was super helpful. So it's 12 questions. It takes about 2 minutes. And it will quickly give you an estimate of what percentage of your calories are coming from whole plants, with the 4-Leaf level being 80% or more of your calories from whole plants.
Wow. I'm going to see if I can find it online and maybe link to it while we're talking.
Oh, that would be great. Right. So you can do it on paper, but the online survey is www.4leafsurvey.com.
I'm going to find it. I'm going to put it in the chat right now and in the show notes, because I remember taking it a long time ago, and I'm 100, baby. What can I tell you? Yeah.
Well, my guess is that you get a little bit of processed foods in there occasionally, right? So it's going to take out nothing processed at all. You don't do any, because he won't count whole wheat bread. That will go in processed. You don't need any whole wheat anything.
Nope.
Oh,
I eat fruits, vegetables, whole grains. That's it. I don't eat. Nope. I've been unprocessed since 2011.
Completely. Yeah. No wheat or anything. No oils, nothing.
No oil, no sugar, no salt, no flour, no alcohol. I'm Dr. Goldhammer Jr. basically now. But I have lots of reasons that I like to put the bar that high for me. But I don't recommend other people do it. I'll tell you that. I don't think people should shoot for an A.
Yeah. And when we're working with a health system, being able to promote this is kind of like this continuum, because it really is a continuum, right? So the more whole plants that you eat, the higher the percentage of whole plants. It's inversely related to cancers, heart attacks, and death. So basically any movement that people make is a positive. Obviously you get the most when you go completely unprocessed, completely plant-based, right? But it's really hard to sell that to an entire healthcare system. So when we're talking about kind of integrated, we're really talking about getting people to think about the concept and moving as much as they're willing and able. And my mantra is always to do it without making yourself nuts or people you love nuts, because nuts won't be sustainable. And maybe you can do part of it now, maybe you can do a little bit more later. It's one of those things that you can kind of do in stages if you need to. Other people do it kind of, overnight and they're just right on it. But other people need to develop some more skills first. So
yeah, and that's weird. I don't ever tell people to seek the perfection diet, because I tell them do the least restrictive diet you can do that will give you the results you seek. But for some people, depending on what's been going on, they have to be a little bit stricter.
Yeah. If you're trying to reverse the heart disease, if you're trying to reverse diabetes, especially for autoimmune, it's really important to get all of the animal off the plate and to really unprocess it as much as you possibly can. So
we have so many comments on a beautiful quilt behind you. People are wondering if you made it.
I did not. So this is my office, because if I was going to do this from home, I have a dog who likes to bark if you're not paying attention to her. So I came into the office to do the interview. That quilt is actually from a patient who I cared for who was on a hospice. And she was a quilter her whole life. And I went to her funeral, and the family asked everybody if she had ever made them a quilt to please bring it to the funeral. And everybody did. There were like 100 quilts. It was just beautiful, beautiful things. But this is a quilt that she quilted along with 3 of her friends as she was on hospice, and they gifted it to me. So that is always on my wall in my office and will always stay there. So.
Wow, that is really beautiful.
It is a beautiful quilt, and it makes me smile just to see it. It's just a wonderful family and a wonderful person, and this was it's very, very meaningful gift.
I didn't realize you graduated from University of Pittsburgh Medical School in Shadyside. That's where my brother went. You didn't know him, did you? He was a medical doctor.
No, I didn't.
His last name was Goodman, Richard Goodman, anesthesia.
His name is familiar, but I don't remember.
If he was still alive, he would be 67. Okay. No, he'd be 60. Oh gosh, 60. He was born in 1952, so whatever that is.
60. So he was there when I was there, but I don't remember him.
So interesting.
We don't spend very much time in the operating room in family medicine.
Wow. So family medicine, you told me, I didn't know the difference until today, how it was different than internal medicine.
Right. So family medicine includes kids. We also do gynecology, and some of us do obstetrics as well. So deliver babies. I did that for the first 9 years. And then once I adopted my own kids, there was just it was too much chaos. It was not sustainable. So it's a little bit broader than internal medicine. And we do more outpatient and less inpatient work typically.
Nice. So, but you have lifestyle medicine. What are the 6 pillars of lifestyle medicine that you teach to your patients?
So the easiest way to remember it's what we do with our fingers, our forks, and our feet, right? So fingers is smoking, alcohol, drug use. Forks is what we eat. Feet is physical activity. And then the other 3 on the backside are sleep, which is pretty self-explanatory. Stress, not just how much you have, but how well you handle it. We all know folks that have a hangnail and it's life is just about over. So, some folks could deal with tremendous amounts of stress. They've got great skills. And the last one is love. And that means good social relationships. But to me, it also means something that you love enough in life that you're willing to make a change for. So I have one hard and fast rule when I do a first lifestyle medicine consult. So I still have my primary care base, but I also do consults. I don't take any new primary care patients. I'm just doing, the new patients are all consults for lifestyle medicine within the health system and some outside the health system. But and my hard and fast rule in that first visit is you don't leave till I know what you love. And if you can't tell me what it is that you love enough to make a change for, that's my number one priority. Because fear is a terrible motivator for more than 1 or 2 months. And a lot of people, when they're referred into me, they come because they just had a heart attack, they got a cancer diagnosis. They're really scared, right? So that's something that motivates a lot of people to make a change if something bad just happened. And you know, about a quarter of the time when I ask people what it is that they love enough that they're willing to make a change for, well, more than a quarter of the time they break down crying. So a lot of times they'll break down crying because they do have these wonderful things in their lives that they want to be, you know, alive for, and that brings them to tears. But sometimes it's that they don't have anything, and for those folks, that really getting them out of that depressed state, getting them to look hopefully at something in their future, really is the number one task. Because it doesn't matter what you tell them about eating plants, you know, if they don't have any reason to want to be alive, why would they bother to eat them?
Right? Especially because the things that they're using or abusing, whether it's cigarettes or alcohol or food for comfort, if you have nothing else, it's really hard to stop those behaviors.
Right. So it becomes building those behaviors. So that's really lifestyle medicine is really kind of interesting in that you're looking at you got to look at all 6 of those pillars kind of all at the same time at the get-go and kind of say, okay, here's where we are. This is where we want to be. And how do we maneuver through the obstacles that we've got with the skills that we've got to get where we need to go? So often I won't push food as the very first thing that we're going to do, because if somebody's only sleeping 4 to 5 hours a night and they're super stressed and they have absolutely no coping mechanisms and there's nothing in their life that they love, I've got a lot of work to do before there's going to be any change that's going to significantly happen on the food front. Right?
And that's why they talk about the why that makes you cry.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Linda says, I love that you donate to PCRS. She's talking about you.
PCRM?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
We do too, Linda, just maybe not as much, but that's wonderful. We're affiliated.
Well, it's not like the book makes a lot of money, but all the proceeds from the book go to PCRM to support.
Oh, that's what she means, the book. That's really wonderful. So yeah, I'm going to put a link to the book, guys, and especially even more important to buy it now because you're also doing a solid for PCRM. Do you only see patients that live in New York, or can you do telemedicine for lifestyle medicine?
So we do telemedicine, but we only do it within New York at this point because of the legalities of it. So you have to actually get licensed through different states to be able to see patients from other states. So it becomes a little bit tricky based on malpractice and other legal stuff. So there are folks that do lifestyle medicine consults from other states, but they basically have to go through the hoops to get certified in those states.
So you could see anybody telemedicine as long as they lived anywhere in New York, right?
Yeah, anywhere in New York, that's not a problem. But I can't outside of New York. If it's one of my patients and they're in Florida for the winter, those I can see, right? But if they're residents of those other states, I would have to get whatever paperwork you got to do to get okayed for those states. So nice. There are doctors who do that. And the PCRM, actually, they do consults for many different states.
Right. And so does my doctor, Dr. Wayne Dysinger.
Yeah.
So that's really cool. What made you decide to work for Rochester Regional Health?
So I was in a really small micro practice model when I started incorporating lifestyle medicine into my practice, which was a really great way to do it because I was in charge of my office, right? I didn't have to get anybody's permission to do it. I could just start doing it. And it was really fun because, I started doing consults with folks, and then I was like, okay, they really need a class to walk them through how to make this change over the course of like a month, right? Because people are really getting overwhelmed and they don't know what to do. So then I developed a class that we ran at the office. And then people who had finished the class, they really needed a support group. So then we created that. So I had all this freedom having my own practice to kind of create these different pieces that people needed, which was awesome. But the problem was, I had all these patients on my waiting list and there's only one of me and I couldn't see them. And it was really tough, right, to figure out how to make this work in real life. And what I realized was that we really need all doctors. leaders to be shifting this thinking, right? Because I can throw a couple of starfish back in the ocean, but if they're all in the beach, we need everybody throwing starfish back in the ocean, right? So we really needed to change the whole way the medical system works to incorporate this. And I worked with the hospital system that's right here in my town. I tried for a couple of years to get them on board with this concept, and I just couldn't get there. But when I approached Rochester Regional Health, and I kind of said, well, this is what I do. This is what I'm thinking. What I'd really like to do is to work to kind of move the system in this direction so people can actually get the information they need and the resources and the support. And the person that I interviewed was Dr. Bridget Whiffling. She was a VP, vice president at Rochester Regional. And when I asked her if did she see a role for me here? And she basically just dropped her pen and said, can you start tomorrow? So I knew it was in a good place that I would get really great support with kind of this concept that I've been doing. So.
Right. Have you had any struggles trying to incorporate lifestyle medicine into mainstream medicine?
So there's definitely some pushback from other physicians who kind of really don't think that it's legitimate. It really helps to have the American College of Lifestyle Medicine because you've got an entire organization now, and it's the fastest growing subspecialty, in the world. So you've got and they all have this unified message. So that's helpful. But sometimes you kind of get labeled as, that crazy plant-based doc, and it's hard. It's hard for people to kind of admit that they're doing things in a way that may not be optimal. So there's definitely some pushback from that. It's just also financially difficult in that basically hospital systems at this point still make money primarily by the services they provide, by how many surgeries you have, whether you're hospitalized, and not by how well you actually make people. So I have to be very careful as I'm kind of pushing things that we're not going to ever do anything that's going to make the hospital go under, right? So they're very supportive, and that's great, but there are limitations with that. We're really lucky. They just changed the billing codes this year and how you approach them. And it's moved so that when you spend time counseling in diet, you actually can get reimbursed for your time spent on that, whereas previously you couldn't. So it was very hard to get primary care docs to incorporate it as part of their practice because it wasn't reimbursed, unless you spent more than 50% of your time at the patient visit doing it. So now it's whatever time you spend doing it, you get credit for. So it's much better from that standpoint.
I mean, I can understand the doctors not wanting to change or do it, especially if they make money doing procedures, but how can they say it's not viable or accurate? You know what I mean? I mean, there's science that shows it is.
Yeah, but they don't look at it, right? So, that's like Dr. Kim Williams' phrase, which is that, he was the past president of the American College of Cardiology. And there are two kinds of cardiologists, ones who are vegan and ones who haven't read the data. And I think that's really true, is that if you just don't look at it, then you don't have to incorporate it. So I think a lot just don't look at it. But there's a ton of data to support it if you look.
Have you been the Ted Barnett to any of your colleagues?
I don't know whether they would say that on the Ted Barnett, but we've certainly gotten a lot of other providers on board. So, we really are trying to retro train the folks that we have here, so they all get exposed to lifestyle medicine. All of the new docs go through a 1-year program of kind of what's about the health system, and as part of that, I give a talk about lifestyle medicine, what we're trying to do here. So they all get an introduction to lifestyle medicine, and then we run a couple of continuing medical education programs for folks who are already established within the system, trying to get them to know the background for lifestyle medicine. And then we're encouraging as many as possible to go and get board certified. So we've gotten a number of folks board certified, and we've had a few people hired that are also board certified already. So progress. It's a little slow. With COVID, took a nice big chunk out of last year. So.
How about friends and family? We've been successful in introducing plant-based diets to them.
Yeah, so lots of friends and family. Nice story about my mom. She's turning 81 in just a couple of weeks. And when she was 77, she has been traveling ever since my father died when she was 70. So, but she wasn't going on this big trip that she's always talked about. Like, she's always wanted to go to Machu Picchu in Peru, right? Ever since she was a teenager, right? But she was doing all these trips, but she wasn't going to this one. And when I talked to her when she was 77, she's like, yeah, I don't think I can do it. I think my time's passed. And what I said was, well, why don't you plan it a year out? And why don't you just start walking, just a little bit at a time, most days of the week. And I had gotten her to kind of adopt more of a plant-based diet. And over the course of the next year, she just did amazing. She lost a bunch of weight, and she went to Machu Picchu, and I've got this great picture of her, at the top there, and it was just great. And then the next year, she took a 5-week trip all the way over to, she was in the Orient, and then she ended up spending a week in India at the end. So now I've got this picture of her in front of the Taj Mahal. I joke that basically whatever inheritance I was ever going to get is now being spent on crazy trips. So, which is great because she's doing really well.
So maybe going to Machu Picchu was her why in a way.
I think it did. She wasn't really that. It wasn't like she was kind of coming to it from that standpoint. It was like, maybe I can do it. Maybe I can. And, she just got amazingly more active and felt a lot better, and she was able to do it. So I'm so happy.
That has to be the hardest part, I think, working with patients, is getting them to their why if they don't have one. Because when I get a client that doesn't know, I'll say, why do you want to lose weight? And, a lot of times it's for a short-term thing. Well, my daughter's getting married in a few months. Well, okay, then you're going to look good on that day, and then that's it,
Yeah. Figuring out what it is you want to be healthy for in 10 years is kind of like, that's usually the question I ask. So if you had really good health in 10 years, what would you be doing that you love? Right? So that it's not short-term goals can be helpful. But when you're thinking about what's really going to motivate you to make change for the long haul, it's thinking in bigger terms.
Yeah.
Although some people might get so healthy and feel so good losing weight for that reunion that they might stick with it. So
right, unless they get back into the pleasure. I mean, I've seen it where I'm thinking of a particular friend of mine that I went to the wedding, and then all the pleasure trap foods and alcohol at the wedding, boom, the next day back in the pleasure trap. Yeah. So we have a question from a live viewer named Molly. Do you see a role for health and wellness coaching by non-doctors to assist lifestyle changes?
Absolutely. The problem is that right now they're not built into the reimbursement system. So I have a coach who works with me. There are actually 2 folks that work as coaches. They're both nurses. So we can at least bill them as nursing visits, right? So you get some reimbursement for that. But there's no mechanism to bill as a coach, as a lifestyle coach, without having a nursing degree. And it's a flaw in the system for sure. That needs to change. But it's difficult. So hopefully medical insurers will get more on board with this idea over time. But it's very difficult right now because almost all of those folks are, if you're getting coaching and it's not a nurse who's doing it, you're paying out of pocket.
Yeah. Let's see. Sarah says, do you have any words of wisdom for beginners who want to stay the course?
So I guess the question is beginners as in have just started making changes or have really made a whole change to a plant-based diet and but they're just new at doing it. So
maybe she could clarify, or you could answer it both ways.
Okay. So just starting, it's kind of making changes that don't seem huge at first and building on those. So one of the techniques that I talk to folks about is to trying 1 to 2 new plant-based recipes per week, not trying more than that. You keep the ones you like, you toss the ones you don't like, and then at first you're a little bit bored because you're eating a lot of the same things over and over again. But it's really demoralizing if you pick 2 recipes or 3 recipes for that week and they are really bad, right? Did you have that happen to you, AJ?
I was 17 when I went plant-based. So I was in college and I just ate what they had in the dorm. I mean, I didn't, because you know what, because you talk about the why, my why was so strong to not harm animals that it wasn't hard for me, because when you have that, I think it's great when people go vegan for any reason, whether it's environment or their health, but when it's that ethical piece, it's like, it's not hard because you don't want to hurt anything, so it wasn't overwhelmed for me. It was like, this is great. I'm not hurting any animals. So
yeah.
44 years ago.
Way to go.
Yep. I even got an award for being the OG vegan on the wall. So
In doing it for the long haul, planning, I think you just need to have a consistent plan. A day of the week where you're going to grocery shop, and you just have a kind of like a regimen that, this is what I'm going to make the next week. It doesn't have to be Monday, I'm going to have this, and Tuesday, I'm going to have that. It's going to be, these are the couple of recipes I'm going to make. I'm going to, every weekend I make a pot of soup. I made it this morning. That's going to be my lunches this whole week. I package it in, 5 separate, little glass Tupperwares. So it's just easy and brainless, and you just grab it. I'll always cook something for dinner on Saturday that I'll have leftovers during the week. Something on Sunday I'll have leftovers for during the week. There are 2 things on the menu list that are 30 minutes or less, because I know I'm not going to have time to do more than that after work. And then there's one meal that we get takeout Indian, and it's not perfect because there's a little oil in it, but
yeah. Well, people have to find what works for them. And I think what I've seen, the biggest obstacle isn't so much the recipes or that the food tastes good. It's that social component, because there's so many people that their families don't support them. The husband doesn't want to eat this way, the kids, and then they cave to the crave. But, they're trying to eat some healthy plant-based food that everybody's turning their nose up and bringing in, pizza and all kinds of crap. And eventually, what they say, you hang around a barber shop, eventually you get a haircut.
I've got a 20-year-old at home right now. So good thing is that he doesn't bring in stuff that tempts me typically. So
nice. Let's see. There is a question from Mylene. Any advice for emergency staff and their role in healthy lifestyle and plant-based nutrition promotion?
Emergency room staff.
Yeah.
You're not going to have.
You wouldn't have had this heart attack if you. No, I'm kidding, of course. I'm just thinking how I would do it.
Yeah. You're not going to have a lot of time to do much education, right? So it's going to be directing them to something. So if you've got somebody who does lifestyle medicine, or is a plant-based provider in the area that will do consults, you can do something as simple as, sending them out to, watch Forks Over Knives, and here's the site. And then if you're interested, this is the person to contact, and you're done, right? Because you don't have a lot of time. You're not going to have a lot of time.
Yeah, that's true. But anything, you can, I've seen people in the emergency room. I actually had a coworker once, and I'll never forget, because the paramedics took him to the hospital at work. He had, chest pain. And so I went after my shift to visit him in the hospital, in the emergency room. He was still there. And while he was waiting for his results, they told him, well, either you're diabetic or you had a heart attack. We'll find out soon. And then food services comes, and they fed him beef stew, apple pie, and whole milk while he was waiting to see if he had a heart attack or was diabetic.
Really appalling. The whole diet at the hospitals is just super appalling. New York, we're blessed. We got legislation passed this last year that all hospitals had to have plant-based diets, vegan diets that were, you didn't have to ask for. They were obvious that was offered. Now we just have to get people to actually order it for them, right? Because the diet gets ordered by the physicians. But we're making progress. We've got 2 plant-based cardiologists at our institution now. So, we just got to keep making progress wherever we can.
That's fantastic. Anne wants to know if the nurses that can do the coaching in your practice, are they nurse practitioners?
No. So this is more than probably anybody wants to know, but 9921211 is the code for a nursing visit. You do not need to be seen by any kind of provider. So a nurse can bill for that. So if you had to go in for, I don't know, you needed your blood pressure checked, or you needed a sugar checked, or something like that, that the nurse was going to actually do for you, that's a code that they can use to bill for service where you don't need to see a doctor. That's what they can bill for a coaching visit. So it's not a great payer, but actually it pays enough to cover, if they're doing a 30-minute, they're doing a 30-minute coaching session, and they do 2 of them an hour, it's enough to cover their salary and the support staff for them. So it ends up at least not losing a hospital system money, even if it doesn't make you a lot. It covers the person's salary.
Wow. Thanks. Let's see. We have a question here from Laura. I'm a psychotherapist in Wexford, Pennsylvania. I try to incorporate food and eating plant-based for mental health. What strategy could I use to encourage people to make this change?
That's actually a lovely, a really great approach, because mental health, it has a profound profound effect on health. I think the strategy that I would use is that it would be focusing on adding more. So instead of kind of encouraging people to get the dairy and the meat and the processed stuff off their plate, that I would couch it in a positive term, trying to get 8 servings of plant-based foods in every day, or as close to that as you can. That's really what the data says, is that it kind of plateaus after 8 servings, but pretty much 8 servings is what most of us what we would eat. Basically, that would replace most of whatever was on our plates, right? So 10 doesn't seem better than 8. It seems like 8 is kind of like the magic number. So I would encourage people to get as close to that as they can. There's a wonderful program called the LIFT Project. This is Dr. Morton's, Darren Morton out of Australia's baby. And it's a 10-part class, and it's been proven to improve mood and well-being by 30%. And patients can do it on their own, or clients can do it on their own, or you can do it in groups. It actually works great if you do it in a group. But it's one of the lessons, one of the weekly classes is on food and making this as a change. And the recommendation is to do 8 servings of plant-based foods a day.
That's great. Thank you. Okay. There's a question about thyroid. Jenny says, Dr. Graff mentioned that she had thyroid problems. Does whole food plant-based help with thyroid?
For a lot of thyroid, it does. So, hypothyroidism is primarily an autoimmune disease. So most autoimmune diseases, many of them anyway, are triggered by animal-based foods, especially dairy. If you think about it, basically what's happening is your antibodies attacking your own protein, right? So what looks like our protein, but animal proteins. So you make a little reaction to dairy or to chicken, and it turns around and it attacks you, right? So sometimes that is so set up that you now recognize yourself as foreign. But lots of times, if you take out the initial trigger, like in the animal-based foods off your plate, that really decreases. So it depends a little bit on how bad the thyroid disease is and what type it is. There are some types that aren't autoimmune. But for a lot of folks, it's one of the latter things that I'll do when I'm working with somebody. If they have hypothyroidism, we kind of like get everything kind of as good as we can, and then wean them slowly off their thyroid medication and see if it holds, to see if it is going to reverse. So personally, I was on 75 micrograms a day of Synthroid. So that's about half the total dose that you would need if your thyroid were completely burned out. And basically every couple of months, I would just take it down by 25 micrograms, and my thyroid held, and it's held ever since. So,
You got off your medication then?
Yeah, I got off the medication the first year that I was I was off it within 6 months, and I've not needed it since.
That's amazing.
Some folks, you try to wean and it doesn't work. And the more you're on to start with, the less likely you are to be able to wean off of it. You know, if you've got somebody who's on 150 or more micrograms a day, usually their thyroid's pretty burnt out. So once you get rid of the trigger, there may not be recovery, but it's always worth a shot. Autoimmune disease sometimes really surprises you. I had a woman with rheumatoid arthritis who had symptoms for 35 years. She had been on every medication under the sun with continued progression. Nothing really worked. She was on chronic prednisone. And I never thought that she would reverse with a plant-based diet, but she got off all of the medication. She had no further inflammation. She had some joint disease that was permanent from some disfigurement from her past, but all the inflammatory and active disease went away. And that was 35 years of disease that basically she got rid of all the active inflammation just going plant-based.
Right. And people shouldn't beat themselves up or feel bad if they're on thyroid medicine. I just want people to know I'm on it. I've been plant-based for 44 years, eating perfectly for, like 10. And sometimes you just are on medicine. It's not that doesn't mean the plant-based diet doesn't work, is what I want people to know. And some people will get off or need less medicine. But if you're not in that thing, don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. That
is a very, very, very good point. Autoimmune disease is one of those things that is, kind of a crapshoot, right? It's a 50-50-ish kind of proposition when I meet with folks that going plant-based is good for you in a million other ways. It may or may not fix your autoimmune disease. It may be too well established that it's just not going to come back.
Absolutely. Let's see. There's a question from Carla. My family is not good about eating leftovers. Any idea about quick fix for weeknights? Instant Pot.
Instant Pot is great. So this may not be so much of a family meal. My quick and dirty, I only have 5 minutes and I don't feel like cooking and I'm not prepared, is a sweet potato in the microwave, half can of beans and a big dollop of salsa on it, and you're done.
Yeah, I love those quick things. We just have a baked potato or a sweet potato in the microwave, stuff it with corned beans, salsa, yum, delicious.
Yeah, you're done.
Like 10 minutes. RM says, are the mindfulness sessions your clinic offers in groups or as individual?
So we do them as groups typically. I mean, obviously things are weird now with COVID. So we've been running it kind of via Zoom, right, for now. We're trying to figure out what things are going to look post-COVID, right? Because the nice thing about COVID is that what we were trying to do before COVID was have pods kind of throughout our whole health system. So lifestyle medicine kind of pods, so that you had a practitioner and group programming kind of not very far from anybody, wherever you happen to be in our 11 county areas, right? So this is a very big health system. So we're actually, I think, in 14 counties now, but that was the plan kind of when we started. And my office was designed for the one here, and my waiting room doubles as a classroom. And then we would do whole food plant-based potluck support groups right here in my office, right? So we kind of designed the office to really work well for that. But we were planning to do these kind of, retro train people, get people set up to kind of incorporate these throughout the health system. With COVID, we can't do any of that, right? You're right. We're still not doing any group in-person meetings. And the benefit is that now when we run our sessions, the support group, we can do that through the whole system, and I can just run it, right? So, so we're kind of figuring out how this is going to look when we start to open back up. But we have been doing them in person here at my office, but most recently we've been doing them on Zoom and opening it up to a wider audience.
Great, thanks. We're getting lots of questions for you. Brian says, thank you for your great work. I'm a future plant-based lifestyle medicine doctor as well. How can I contact you for networking? I'm part of a pre-med group trying to get colleagues on board.
Absolutely. So yeah, so my email address is Kerry, Kerry.Graff, Graff, at rochesterregional.org. It's pretty easy.
There you go, Brian. Sorry if I missed your question. For the young lady that said her family doesn't like leftovers, or for any family who's got picky eaters, I recommend getting this sign for your kitchen. I really like that. Yeah. See if I can find one. I got it at Farmers Market in Los Angeles, but maybe I could just, scan a copy and send it to you then. So that would be good. Oh, Christine says, do you have a link for the LIFT program that you mentioned?
Yeah, www.liftproject.com. I think it's .com, not .org. I don't know. Liftproject.com.
Okay, thank you so much. And let's see if there's any questions. While I'm looking for, oh yes, since you're not taking any new patients right now for primary care, Krista wants to know, are there any other plant-based primary care doctors in Rochester, New York area that you know of?
Oh, so somebody here is from Rochester. Very cool. So my office is actually taking them. So our PA here is Katie McMillan, and she's taking new patients. And I have a partner, Jen Albrecht, and she's taking new patients. So they're both doing primary care patients, and they're both plant-based.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
All right.
There are a number of other ones in Rochester too. If you go to plantbaseddocs.com, you should be able to find other plant-based docs.
Do you guys all hang out, you and Dr. Barnett and Dr. Campbell?
Dr. Barnett and I more so than Dr. Campbell. Dr. Campbell's got 2 little kids, or not so little anymore. They keep him pretty busy. So, and then there's COVID this last year. Nobody's been getting together. So,
yeah. Sarah says, my doc has me eating fruit for breakfast and lunch plus a normal healthy meal. I don't know what that means specifically, though. Is this a good approach? This is working well for me, but I'm getting bored with so much fruit.
So I guess the question is, how many vegetables are you eating? right? So because of if you're eating enough fruit that's kind of keeping you going for breakfast and lunch, that would be a lot of that. Fruit is great. I'm not arguing against fruit, but if you're only having one serving of vegetables at dinner or two servings of vegetables at dinner, and I'm not sure you're getting enough vegetables. And I kind of have a mantra, which is if the meal doesn't have a whole grain, a bean, or a potato, it's not a meal. It's just a snack. Because you're going to be hungry within 2 to 3 hours. So the exception to that is breakfast. Some people are not that hungry at breakfast. I don't understand those people. I get up and I'm like, where's the food? But if I don't have oatmeal at breakfast, I'm really hungry before I hit lunch, right? So I need a whole grain. But for some people, they don't need to eat that much at breakfast, and they're okay with just some fruit. But I think it sets you up for being ravenous by mid-afternoon. And when we're ravenous, we're going to seek out the fattiest, sugariest things we can get our hands on because our bodies are thinking they're going to starve to death. So I think it sets people up for craving. And if you're happy and that's working for you, and if you're eating mostly plant-based, then I think, okay. But those would be my caveats with that I would be worried about.
Yeah, I always think of what Dr. McDougall says, no starch, no satiety. But yet I'm amazed at the people that I have on the show, some of them doctors that do raw food for years without starch. And I'm like, I don't know how it works for you. Great. But I can't imagine not having potatoes or sweet potatoes. I would feel so hungry just eating fruits and vegetables. A lot of them have to add like plant fats to get enough calories, like the tahini and the avocado. But yeah. If you're just eating low fat, like Robbie Barbera, you got to eat like 14 pounds of food a day.
Right. You spend your whole time either shopping, chopping, or eating and pooping, right? Because that's an awful lot of records to go through.
Shopping, chopping, eating, and pooping. Sounds exactly right.
If you look at any of those videos, for the raw vegans, what I eat in a day, and they're like these very skinny people with this massive amount of food. I'm like, how on earth do you eat all that? How do you do anything else? I don't know.
Yeah, it's great.
But I tell people,
swear about it. So.
Yeah. What I tell people is lots of fruits, lots of vegetables, backfill the rest of the calories with whole grains, beans, potatoes, and then a little nuts and seeds.
Right. Very good. So Sherry Schmidt says, hi, Kerry. Doug and I miss you.
Oh, we miss you too. Oh my gosh. So Doug and Sherry ran a challenge. They're in the schools here, have been in schools here, but moved out west in the past year. And just very, very, very missed.
Well, Doug's been on the show.
So they're fabulous. Just fabulous.
Wait, they live out in West? Where West?
Well, Sherry, answer on there where you went. I'm trying to remember. Arizona, I think.
Oh, so they're near me. Cool. RM says, what's your take on coffee? I gave it up recently after reading its acid for me. However, it's reported to have many health benefits. I replaced it with a decaf alkaline tea.
So a little bit of a mixed bag. You got to be careful about the caffeine content, especially if you have any kind of issues with sleep, right? So you can have, some people are sensitive to caffeine still 14 hours after they drink it. So, so for those folks, you want to drink it very early in the morning if you're going to drink it, and then not drink it the rest of the day. And it's diuretic, right? So anytime you're drinking caffeine, you're going to pee out more than you drank. So you got to replace the fluids with something because you don't want to run yourself dehydrated. So I kind of split the difference. I'll drink 1 cup of coffee in the morning, and then I'll drink a naturally decaffeinated tea the rest of the day. So I'm hoping to get the benefits from it without any of the badness. But if you're looking at nutritionfacts.org and Michael Greger, he pushes coffee, and he's the guru for anything in terms of.
He pushes green tea. I didn't know he was a fan of coffee. I thought it was green tea that he said to have.
Well, he promotes both.
Wow, did not know that. So I think it just depends on the person, because some people, I forget the word that Dr. Olvera talks about this. Some people just don't, I don't know if it's methylate or metabolize caffeine as well. And it's just not good. I think people have to know their own constitution. Right. Yeah.
But if you're trying to get 64 ounces of non-caffeinated stuff in every day, and then if you're drinking coffee, then you have to actually make up that extra, like you're drinking an 8-ounce coffee, then you got to add another 8 ounce water to that 64 ounces. And you get to a point where you just can't keep up.
Right. Nice. Let's see. So Giselda says, how do you deal with your doctor if she doesn't believe that being on a whole food plant-based lifestyle will help you? I say fire her. That's how I deal with her. Find another doctor. Especially a lot of the lifestyle medicine doctors will do consults. All the doctors at True North, Dr. Lori Marvis has a whole system of doctors that will do it in every state.
Yeah.
They have a PCRM. So it's very easy, especially with COVID, to find a lifestyle medicine doctor that's also a plant-based doctor.
I think it's hard because I was the doctor who wasn't open to that for a while, right? So so if they're just resistant to promoting it, but they're open to what you're doing, then you might still want to work with them, because when you have your bronchitis, they're close and you trust them from those kinds of things, right? And then work with somebody else from the lifestyle medicine perspective if you can't find a lifestyle medicine oriented doctor that's near you. But it's hard. You really do kind of approach everything a little bit differently. If you've got somebody who's going to be really resistant, I wonder, sometimes physicians think that you're going to reject everything that is, any medication or surgery or any of those kind of recommendations, and you want to just do plants, right? My feeling is that my role is really to use the whole toolbox, right? And plant-based eating and the lifestyle medicine, other pieces of lifestyle medicine are just part of that toolbox. There are times when people absolutely need medication and they need to have surgery, and they're not stable and they really need to have their heart stent done because they're in trouble right then, right? You got somebody with crushing chest pain, you don't wave broccoli at them, you get them fixed, right? So it may be that the doc that she has is more worried that she's going to reject everything rather than opening to including this as part of the treatment plan. So that person you might still be able to work with them, but I don't know enough details to know for sure whether they could, or whether they're completely saying this is completely worthless. In which case, if they're not open to reading studies and looking at the data, then you probably need to replace them. At least I would.
Do you play forks over knives in your waiting room while patients are waiting to see you?
We do not, because it's too long. You're only going to see like little snippets of it and you'll get lost. So we play clips from PCRM and Nutrition Facts because they're nice and short. Trailers for the movies, right? So we have a trailer for Game Changers and a trailer for Forks Over Knives. I think there's a trailer for Eating You Alive. So yeah, all things that are short, so people will get little snippets, but and not miss the whole movie.
Nice. Sherry says they're in Phoenix.
Phoenix.
Yep. Debbie says, if you have chronic kidney disease, should you be on potatoes?
So there has not been any problem with all the potassium that is in plants with folks that have kidney disease. It is a theoretical risk. When they actually did the studies, the folks who had chronic kidney disease and were on plant-based diets actually did better, and they had significant kidney function improvement. In fact, quite a few folks that were kind of on the borderline for dialysis, where they were really testing this to see whether the potassium was going to be a problem. They were at the point where they were really waiting for, they're just about to go on dialysis, and they actually improved enough that they didn't need to do so. So you're okay. I probably would get checked a little bit more often just to be on the safe side, and so you don't freak out your nephrologist. But they have not seen a problem with it. So it's again a developing field. The studies are really ongoing with that now. There's one at at least one at the U of R, University of Rochester here, looking at plant-based diets and kidney.
Right, and there are some plant-based nephrologists now, like Sean Hashmi and others. So that's really cool. So talk about the new book you're writing. With the 3 F's. Fingers, feet, and forks.
Fingers, forks, and feet. Sleep, stress, and love. So, I started trying to write down what I was doing as a way of kind of guiding other clinicians through thinking through how you kind of really approach a lifestyle medicine patient. And then I'm like, this is a really small audience. This is not really it's helpful, but I kind of changed the idea, which is really, if you don't have somebody that you can see in a consult, how do you think about your own health as you're making changes? If you want to make lifestyle change, what do you kind of need to address first? So, what are the 6 areas? Where do you actually rank in each of those? Kind of how good are you in each of those areas? And how do you kind of maneuver through what's your approach to moving forward on it? So that's what the book is about, with a bunch of patient examples in it. So
will there be any recipes in it?
of course there will be. There's got to be recipes in it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of recipes, people always want to know, Mandy asked, what does Dr. Graff eat in a day?
Oh gosh. So usual breakfast is either still cut oats or rolled oats with fruit, and what fruit it is will change. Early in the week, it will be maybe some fresh blueberries, or could be pears, and it'll change all the time. So, and I'll often eat a whole grapefruit because I really love grapefruits, and they're really good this year. Last year they were terrible. I don't know what the deal was, but this year, like, they're phenomenally good. So I'm gorging right now.
Do you like the ruby red or the other ones?
The ruby reds. Oh my gosh, just to die for. They're so good. I spent $12 on grapefruit last week at the grocery store. It was really embarrassing when they rang it up. I was like, wow, that's a lot of grapefruit. Anyway, lunch will be whatever soup I made on the weekend, right? So I pack that, every day, along with 2 clementines. So this morning's soup, I had some leftover red cabbage. So I was looking for some sort of red cabbage soup. So I grabbed a recipe and then I kind of jury-rigged it. So it's carrots and onions and red cabbage and the sweet potato. I threw some lentils in it rather than chickpeas, tomatoes, broth. What else was in there? That's all I can think of. So that and 2 clementines. It's usually clementines because they pack easily and I can just grab them in the morning and I don't have to think about cutting them up. It's just easy and they're easy to peel.
Yeah.
And then dinner will be, it varies, right? So hopefully on the weekend I'll make, so this weekend I'm going to make the sweet potato black bean enchiladas. So I'll have those for leftovers during the week. So it'll just usually it's a meal. It kind of depends on whether my son's home or not home. If he's not home, I might be a little less fanatical about actually making it as a meal, and I might be more like, okay, let me just grab a bunch of different vegetables and roast them and make some farro or some wild rice or something.
Nice, great. Pretty good.
If I'm cooking just for me, it might be really plain. If I'm cooking and my family's going to eat it, then it'll probably be more like something that looks like a meal. They'll be happier with that.
Nice. Natalia wants to know, what is your take on intermittent fasting?
So it can be helpful. One of the biggest problems that happens with intermittent fasting is that most people do it so they start eating late, and so they'll eat like lunch and then they'll eat supper, and so they'll end up packing their calories kind of towards the end of the day, which really hurts your metabolism. So you're better off if you're doing intermittent fasting, if you're doing it kind of earlier in the morning and you finish before 5 and you try to pack your calories into the first half of the day instead. With the same number of calories, you'll do better with losing weight. The other issue that happens with most people when they intermittent fast is that they don't start eating until noon. They'll be really, really tempted by the donut in the break room, right? Or they'll be so ravenous by lunch that they will, instead of eating the healthy thing that they pack, they might go through the McDonald's drive-thru. So pros and cons, right? So if you can do it, great, but do it first half of the day. Don't let yourself get too hungry. My feeling is that I think it's more important to not let yourself get to the point where you're really hungry, because when you're really hungry, you just crave the fatty, and it's the most calorie dense food, and it makes you much more likely to go off the wagon.
Yeah, and you don't make the best food decisions then.
No, I don't anyway. Maybe some people do, but I sure don't.
Yeah. What do you say to patients that say, oh, well, I can't be on this diet because I'm on blood thinners, so I can't eat greens, or I can't have oxalates, or things like that?
Yeah, so for folks that say that they can't do it because they can't eat greens because they're on blood thinners, you certainly can. You just need to be consistent about it. Certainly, most of the blood thinners it doesn't matter for. So it's only really for warfarin, which is Coumadin, that is going to mess that up. So when you're making a change and you're eating greens, you just need to be consistent with them. Most of the folks who are on blood thinners have a cardiac risk, and greens are very protective for cardiac. So you don't want to eliminate this food that's super protective. So just being consistent about it. If you're getting 3 servings of greens in a day, great. Just do that every single day.
That's neat.
When you make that change, get your INR checked more often
Right.
until you've kind of bridged over.
So they can work with their doctor on this for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
What about people say I'm not even sure what oxalates are, but I hear people say, oh, I can't be on a plant-based diet, I can't have oxalates.
There is a really great video on oxalates on nutritionfacts.org. So if you just basically go to nutritionfacts.org and then you search oxalates, there's a really great video that's put together kind of for what ones, basically how when you cook them, basically you're going to reduce them significantly. Most people can get away with them as long as they're doing that in a certain way. And I'll actually cut and paste the link for patients when they come to see me if that's a concern. And like, please just watch this, and then you're not going to worry about it anymore. You're going to make little tweaks, but it doesn't mean you can't eat them.
That's great. I hear you're known for, I have a saying that I'm known for: if it's in your house, it's in your mouth. And if you're not hungry enough to eat vegetables, you're probably not hungry. But I hear you have a few sayings that you're also known for.
Well, I kind of said most of them, I think, as we've gone along, right? So use plant-based as you can without making yourself nuts, yourself and the people that you love nuts, because nuts will be sustainable. If it doesn't have a whole grain, a bean, or a potato in it, it's not a meal, it's just a snack. Trying to think what other things I like saying.
I have them written down because one of them you said early, which we'll say last because I love it. I love this one. Well, why would you want to just manage disease when you can reverse it? That's brilliant.
Well, it is like the whole way physicians typically approach disease. If you're not a surgeon, right? If you're a surgeon, you want to fix it, you're done, right? But for the rest of it, we're managing all this chronic disease. We have the opportunity to reverse it. We've got the ability to reverse it. We just have to use different tools. So let's do it.
Yep. And don't let trying to be perfect get in the way of doing what's doable. That's great too.
Yeah. Just do as much as you're willing and able at any particular time. And it may change. You might be able to do more later. There's going to be sometimes in your life when you're kind of on damage control. Fine. Just do as much as you're willing and able. Just because you're not perfect doesn't mean that you shouldn't try. Do as much as you can.
Who's that, Voltaire, that said, don't let perfect be the enemy of the good?
I think that is Voltaire.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, it's been a long time since I've been in college, but I think I remember that. Before we get to my favorite and the last one of your famous quotes, a question just appeared in the chat from Carla. My bad cholesterol was up, but my good cholesterol offsets. We eat a lot of plants. Does that contribute to the good cholesterol?
So her bad cholesterol was up, her good cholesterol was also up?
No, she says my bad cholesterol was up, but my good cholesterol, maybe she's meaning offsets it.
Okay. Yeah, so this isn't exactly how it works, but it's a really easy way to think about cholesterol. So you think about your artery as being a street, and your LDL, your bad cholesterol, is the garbage you're sticking out the curb. Your HDL, your garbage trucks that pick it up. So all we really care is that you keep your street clean. So if you've got a lot of garbage, you need a lot of garbage trucks, right? If you don't have that much garbage, you don't need that many garbage trucks. So the big problem that happens when you've got, a lot of garbage and you don't have enough garbage trucks. So lots of times when people go plant-based, their bad cholesterol, the garbage they're sticking out the curb, just plummets, right? But their garbage trucks also go down. But as long as the ratio is okay, they're still fine. So there's some thinking that when you eat plant-based and you see the garbage trucks drop, those HDL drop, physicians like panic and they say this is bad because it's dropped, but you don't have to worry about it. You just look at the ratio.
I know, and that's why I have to be a lifestyle medicine doctor, because a regular doctor would freak out when my cholesterol is 99, but of course my HDL is going to be low because my total cholesterol is low. So if you don't have garbage, you don't need garbage trucks.
Exactly. The other thing that's tricky on cholesterol when you're just starting this diet is your triglycerides might bump up the first couple of months when you adopt a plant-based diet, even when you're doing it really healthy and it's the whole food version. And I don't know why that is, but we'll often see it for even up to 6 months. You'll see this blipped up triglycerides that will get worse when everything else is looking better, but the triglycerides look worse, even though you're doing everything right. And then it starts going, and then it goes down again after 6 months. So we think it's something like in this clearance process, but we don't really have a good idea what's going on with that. So don't freak out if your triglycerides do go up if you've just adopted this.
Right, and I've heard people say sometimes their cholesterol goes up, and isn't that because if they're losing weight, they're losing fat, they're eating their own fat, and their own fat is high in fat and cholesterol? Is that why that happens?
It's very unusual for cholesterol to go up when you go on a plant-based diet. But some people, when they go on plant-based diets, they do a really high fat version, right? So our livers, some people's livers have a shutoff system where if they have fat, they don't turn it into cholesterol, right? But one of the functions of our liver is to take fat and to turn it into cholesterol. Some people, it doesn't matter, whatever, if you've got enough cholesterol and you don't really need any more, if you give the liver any fat, it's still going to make more. It's like this factory just never shuts off. It keeps spewing out cholesterol, right? If you've got that, you've got to keep your fat really low, even on a plant-based diet, or else you might end up higher. So a lot of times what people do is when they get the animal off the plate, they start eating a ton of peanuts. And you're like, yeah, that's not going to help. If you've got that, you're not eating the cholesterol anymore, right? Because there are two ways you get cholesterol in your body. It's what you eat, which is all in animal products. Plants don't have any cholesterol, but all animal foods do. And then you can make it in your liver when you take fat and you turn it into cholesterol. So for some people, they've got to keep the fats really low, or else they just keep making cholesterol anyway.
Right. And that's why that's why it's so helpful to have a lifestyle medicine doctor, because not everybody knows this, and it's not a one size fits all. It's a one size fits many in most, but that's why these little tweaks can be very helpful when you get somebody like you on your team.
Well, it's really fun. It's really fun to have a smattering of different things too. And sometimes our approaches are a little bit different. If somebody's got autoimmune GI disease, you definitely need to tweak how you're doing it, because you throw a bunch of fiber into their systems and they're not going to be happy. So
absolutely, they say go low and slow. So let's come full circle. And one of your other famous quotes, which you mentioned at the beginning, is lasting lifestyle change comes from focusing on what you love, not what you fear. It's a good
most
one.
important thing, the number one thing, because who cares if you do this for a month? You got to do this for your life. You've got to change what you're doing all the time. A month is, that's great if you could do it for a month, but if it's not going to be sustainable, it's not going to get you very, very far. So what is it that's going to motivate you to keep going? So.
Yeah, well, that's why they call it lifestyle medicine, not just 1 month style medicine or just right now style medicine.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I look forward to when your book comes out. Please let me know a few months in advance so we can have you back on the show and talk about the book. Okay.
Thank you so much. That would be great.
Well, thank you so much for the work you do. And I'll have to get Dr. Ted Barnett on now to tell his story of the 17 years he tried to get you to go veg.
He's such a massively, he's done so much in Rochester to move the whole community more plant-based. So he's a treasure, and he's lots of fun, and he's super funny. So he'll be great, I'm sure.
I can't wait. Well, you'll have to connect us, because I don't know. I know him. I've met him at Summerfest, but I've never connected with him by email.
I will hook you up.
And hook me up, girl, and I'm going to hook you up. Okay. Well, I'm going to hook you up with 2 bottles of California balsamic vinegar and flavors of your choice just for being on this show. So I know.
Love that stuff.
Get something for us. So thank you so much, Dr. Graff. And thanks all of you for watching another episode of Chef AJ Live. If you love wonderful female plant-based medicine doctors, please come back tomorrow when my guest is Dr. Jessica Krant. She's board certified in dermatology. She's going to answer all your questions about your skin. Thanks so much, Dr. Graff. Take care.
Thank you.